Hi, this is Miss Litton, and this is my very wonderful Period 4 Honors Biology class. Say hi.
Hi.
And we are finishing up Chapter 27, and this is on Guiding Question C, how do organisms respond to changes in their environment? And the first thing I want you to do, and Blue, this is your job to help slate out. Blue, could you give them a description of what speciation is? Could you explain what speciation is? Go ahead. Okay, then could you change that definition to one word? I think I heard it over. What is it? Macroevolution. Good. Because microevolution is change what? Within the species. And remember the three-toed, yellow-bellied skinks, right? And how it was keeping the embryos inside? But they were still interbreeding, so that was an example of microevolution. Macroevolution is where you change to a new species. Now, and it's right there on your notes too if you look at the top. And the most common form of macroevolution is called allopatric speciation. And an allopatric speciation, and I better back up really quick. For speciation to occur, do you remember the 5 fingers of evolution? Mm-hmm. Slate, guide Blue on the 5 fingers of evolution. Go ahead. Okay. What was the pink? What was the pinky?
Small population.
Right. And the concern about small populations being more likely to contribute to evolution is they can have genetic drift. There were 2 types of genetic drift. One is a type that because there's a disaster and only a few live through. What's that called when there's a disaster? Well, I'm almost hearing it. Bottleneck. Boom shakalaka. Bottleneck effect. It doesn't mean that these are more adapted than the other ones. It doesn't have anything to do with that. There's no natural selection in this. It's just random chance. You're dead. You're alive. When a tornado goes through an area, it's not picking the smartest people to kill. It's not picking the dumbest people unless they're running out like, ooh, pretty tornado. Okay. So it's random who lives, who dies, and that's what genetic drift is about. Some bottleneck occurred, a few get through. What is the other form of genetic drift? Like when a group from the main group comes out and starts another whole thing. What is that called? Founder's effect. And they may not represent the original population's gene frequencies. They may, because they're just a small sampling. So that's genetic drift. That can contribute to evolution. What was the ring finger?
Non-random.
Non-random mating. So you're picking somebody who has the attributes that you want. We talked about that already with sexual selection. Okay, what was the middle finger?
Mutation.
Mutations. Okay, and you can't control mutations; they just happen. It's not that they're the adaptive mutations. If you keep them, if you keep that mutation, it's probably the thumb, which is a what? Adaptation that's helpful. What was the pointer finger?
Genetic flow.
Gene flow. So you could have people leave your population or new people come in. And then the last one, for sure natural selection is involved in this. And what's the last one to get on the thumb? Adaptation. So all of these things can contribute to evolution. All of these things. And when you look at allopatric speciation, you have this group of bugs, and for some reason they were separated. A river ran through it. It divided them. And they have different initial gene frequencies. You can think of kind of the genetic drift and the founder's effect. They have different initial gene frequencies. They experience different selection pressures, and they have different what would this be? Mutations. So they change. So even though the barrier is removed, they've accumulated so many changes, they don't mate anymore. And that is the most common form of speciation. You could have two squirrels on either side of a river, Grand Canyon, before it was so grand. And there's water separating them, maybe there's a log. And they run on either side, you know, sometimes they spend time on this riverbank, sometimes on this riverbank. But then it starts to get a little deeper, a little more erosion, and one day the log falls that join the two sides, and they're separated. Papa. And it's whoever's on this side is on this side, and whoever's on that side is on that side. And they can't, on either side, little squirrel tears coming down their fur, they cannot rejoin. Well, it's a founder's effect. They have different initial gene frequency on either side. Maybe the environment is different. Maybe this side has more erosion, it's cut into a rock, and the rock layers have different colors. So how you can hide, maybe you need to be light colored on this side, it's better to be dark colored on this side. You experience different mutations. And over time, they accrue so many differences that even when a bridge is built, and they meet back on the bridge again, they're like, nah, and then they end up not interbreeding anymore. Okay, so that would be an example of allopatric speciation. And on your notes, go to your notes, defined species separated by a geographical barrier. It's literally physical space separating you. Species separated by a geographical barrier. Genetic drift, who then undergo different selection pressures. So a classic on that one would be the salamanders, starting in Northern California, starting to migrate. What's the state right above California? Oregon. So starting to migrate down from what we know of as Oregon. They come down to California, lo and behold, there's a desert in the middle. Some turned left, others turned right. And they keep migrating down, you know, exploiting the different environments as they migrate down through California. And they accrue changes over time, different selection pressures, different mutations, different initial gene frequencies, that by the time they meet again, they have accrued so many differences, they don't interbreed anymore. And that would be a good example of allopatric speciation, and very common form. Now, another type, less common, is called sympatric speciation. And this is when you evolve side by side. It's like, I once knew you, we were able to reproduce together, and now you're dead to me. Okay, you can no longer interbreed. And that normally can only happen when there's differences in chromosome numbers. Something went wrong. Meiosis didn't go well, and you have an extra set of chromosomes. That does not work well for animals, and especially like mammals. It's not going to work well. We get one extra copy of the GART gene. Do you remember what this one is? Trisomy 21. What is that? Most common autosomal disorder. What? Did you say Down syndrome? Yeah. Yes, Down syndrome. Okay? So we get one extra copy of that one gene, and we would have Down syndrome. That causes differences in us. But plants are somehow able to withstand chromosomal numbers like that, where they have extra sets of chromosomes. It's called being a polyploid. They actually have larger fruit as a result of that. And most of the wheat crops, like some of the strawberry crops we have today, rice, grain, all of that, those are all polyploids because the seeds are so much bigger for harvesting. But that doesn't work for animals very well. But on plants, there's a good example of it on Lord Howe Island. It's off of the coast of Australia. And there's a group of trees. They just like kind of, you know, rapidly evolved, and it had to do with a different number of chromosomes. So for sympatric speciation, side by side, defined as speciation without a geographical barrier, usually involves a change in chromosome number. Usually involves a change in chromosome number. So I'm just going to give you a picture and just follow the instructions on how, why, what happened here. And you each have a different one. Go ahead.
That one on the side has a geographical barrier that's allopatric, and it separates them so they go down to right and over. On the right side, sympatric speciation. Okay, so
asking if that's sympatric because there's no, there has to be a zone because it's going to be there. And I have to go on the chart.
You good? Yeah? Okay. So tell me though, what was the one on the left? Allopatric. And I see those two L's, and I think like a river runs through it with those two L's. And then sympatric, I think side by side for sympatric. Okay. Another one is adaptive radiation. In adaptive radiation, it's a good example of this is Darwin's finches. There's 13 different species of finch on the Galapagos Islands. And what you had is some ancestral spinach. Yeah, some spinach. I looked at the nutritional value of spinach and kale. Do you know which one is better for you?
Kale.
Spinach.
I knew it.
Spinach. So if you're going to make your smoothies, use the spinach, not the kale.
Celery. Celery's negative.
Just saying. Kale can be better. You got to get the thing out, but anyway, I just thought I'd tell you that. Okay, anyway, spinach. Finch. Finch land. Oh, and speaking of that, these islands, how could those islands have maybe been formed? Say, subduction zone, volcano, yeah. All right. So from the mainland of Finch lands, no other, maybe you've got to have another finch if you're going to make more, finch babies, right? But competition is low. No other finch are there. So you're just, multiplying. Eventually the numbers are going to get high, and you're going to have more what? Competition. So let's say one starts selecting the larger seeds to eat, and the other one starts selecting the smaller. Did they have a talk about it, and did they go, I'll have the large seeds, you have, no. They did it, but the more competition, remember, what do we call that? Resource partitioning. Yeah. The more that they kind of broke it up, the less competition they faced. And those are the ones that didn't have to spend time fighting because they were going for a slightly different food source and they were going for a slightly different food source. Now all of a sudden, instead of having one species, you have two. But then competition increases again, so somebody eats the small leaves, somebody eats the old leaves, and so on and so on and so on, till you're kind of exploiting every niche that's out there, including one that uses a twig to dig insects out of the tree. Okay, so that would be a good example of adaptive radiation, and there's 13 species there, but even better, on the Hawaiian Islands, there are 20 different species that came from an ancestral finch, and all their beaks are specialized for different food. And I stacked up some dead honey creepers for you right here, and you can see how different their beaks are. Pick your favorite honey creeper. Tell your bio buddy.
I like it because I honestly there's like a million of those red ones.
I don't like this one. That looks scary. I don't like this
Those
short.
ones are actually rare. They're like actually like rare. Like they're like.
Oh, yeah, all my person.
I know, like,
No, I'm
actually,
sorry.
like, dude,
All right,
like-
so adaptive radiation, a single ancestral species gives rise to a variety of new species. A variety of new species. Okay, and then this last thing I already taught you, not it. So hear me. Pass or play. Chloe, are you hurting your bio buddy? It looks like. So pass or play on explaining, differentiating between these two, and also identify where you would find more transitional fossils. Go. Pass.
Okay, so Gradual.
Oh, yeah.
Become isolated. I don't know how to do it. The other one, the species because they're white something, followed by a period.
Are you just saying what you say,
So the first one is when it becomes isolated, I'm guessing the other one is like over time. It's sort of, no, it's like those butterflies.
Okay,
Not
which one do you have more transitional forms? Phyletic gradualism. Yeah, so you can slowly see that. And punctuated equilibrium is fairly rapid, and then some times of just stasis or equilibrium, and then fairly rapid again. And by rapid on the geologic time scale, what do I mean by rapid? 1 million years is rapid. 1 million years is rapid. Okay. So on your notes, gradualistic model speciation occurs after populations become isolated, each group continuing slowly on its evolutionary path. Many transitional links. Punctuated equilibrium, species can appear quite suddenly. Now, those are really the two extremes. It could fall anywhere in between those two. Those are just the two bookends. So it could be both, depending on how quickly the environment changes. And then you have all of chapter 27. I want you to log in after I clear this group here of something you did fun this weekend. Something you did fun this weekend. Essays.
That's not. It's not fun.
Fun to get them done.
I have a fun done. What should
Oh.
I do?
Our name is what we did.
What should I do?
Played with.
You're not putting my name again. Do not, you do not dare. He always puts my name.
I'm just gonna go jelly beans then.
There we go.
This
Cry more. Cry alone.
That's sad.
That's hilarious.
Dang, you naughty kid. No, you're not. You did not put your
Got a mani-pedi? I need a mani-pedi.
Me too. My numbers are so long.
Been cheating.
What?
I saw somebody put
No homework. What classes would you
I didn't do homework, but I had it. I didn't.
Watched Amgen.
Empire.
All right, here we go. Guys, you have 6 questions. Try to handle them independently. Come back to me. 6 questions. Try to handle them independently and try to get 100%. And I will pause you momentarily. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go through them. Hopefully you get a hundy. I want you to keep your screen open to share with your bio buddy so you can discuss it if you missed it. Okay? Oh, only one person missed this. Come alongside. Help your bio buddy. Look at number 1. Did we even use the words isolation speciation? No, we did not. Check with your bio buddy right now and say, bio buddy, do you need help? May I? Shame. Oh, this one was hard. Okay, now this one is surprising to me because I said, which one would you find a lot of transitional fossils? And that would be, which one would you find? Phyletic gradual. Which one wouldn't you find punctuated equilibrium? Okay, so 6 of you, it says, which of the following models is supported by the observation that few transitional links would be found? Okay, so few transitional links would be found. In punctuated equilibrium, they would have very few transitional links. Check with your bio buddy, see if they are one of the 17. If not, say, may I assist you? May I help you? May I guide you in some way? All right, most of you got this. Unfavorable times, I would call a disaster. You lose most of your genotypes, and that would be the bottleneck effect. Not natural selection, not founder effect, not vestigial structures. Please check your bio buddy, make sure everything is okay with them. Say, may I see that? If they don't show, they need guidance. They don't show, they need guidance. Genetic drift produces changes in allele frequencies within a gene pool due to chance. Yes, genetic drift is all about chance. Check your bio buddy because just 2 of you struggled there. See if they need help. Give them some assistance. Ask them. Say, I want to see. If they don't show, start guiding them because they didn't know. If they don't show, they didn't know. Ask. Let me see. Again, we had 2 people. Natural selection occurs when the better adapted members of a population reproduce to a greater degree than the less. Yes. Nature is selecting. Again, asked to see their 5. Were they part of the 31 or part of the 2? And now part of the 4. The proliferation of Darwin's finches is an example of adaptive radiation. So if you were going to take that, your score out of 6, what percentage did you get? Are you happy with that percentage? You like it? Okay. And now what we need to do is you're going to be doing a POGIL and a POGIL. And at the beginning of your POGIL is a video. It's a very, very short video. But instead of you all watching it independently and listening to it and driving you nuts, we'll just watch it once together. And I had a request for that video, 5 Fingers of Evolution, to use as a review, so I put it right here if you ever want to watch that again. Your POGIL's here. So this POGIL, like before, I want you to work in a team of 2 preferably. But if you need to, you can be in a team of 3. But I want you to work independently of the other teams. Independently of the other teams. And the only reason I'm having you do that is when you're in teams of 4 and 5, sometimes somebody is not contributing to the process at all and they're not being responsible for the learning, and I want to really facilitate your understanding of it so you can do well on your test or quiz. I put a picture right at the top. What is that an example of? Allopatric. Allopatric, yeah. Okay, and then the video is here, and I'm just going to put it up on the big screen.
Microevolution may lead to speciation, which is the process of forming a new species. In order to know when a new species is made, we need a proper definition. In the past, morphology alone was used to define a species by classifying organisms according to their internal and external structure and appearance. They were said to be different if they looked different enough, like lions and tigers. But then what can be said about ligers? Yes, they're real, and no, they're not magical. This is a picture of a female and a male liger. Most ligers and tigons are infertile, though they are the largest cats. An amended definition of a species needed to be made. The biological species concept is that a group of individual organisms that are capable of interbreeding to produce fertile offspring in nature is a species. Lions and tigers wouldn't breed in nature because they're so far apart. And most of the ligers are infertile, so by the biological species concept, lions and tigers are still different species. New species can be formed by isolation, often either geographical or reproductive. In geographical isolation, the population is physically separated. Over time, the allele frequencies in the populations will change because physical barriers like rivers, canyons, or oceans will keep them from rejoining their population. In reproductive isolation, a population experiences barriers that prevent them from reproducing to make fertile offspring. Now, there are 2 types of reproductive isolation: prezygotic isolation, where there are problems before fertilization, or postzygotic isolation, where there are problems after mating. Prezygotic isolation could occur if breeding seasons of the populations don't match up, where perhaps one group breeds in May and another in August. If they aren't breeding at the same time, no babies can be made. Postzygotic isolation is like the ligers. Even though the ligers are made, they're mostly infertile and so can't continue breeding. There are also patterns in evolution. The 3 types of patterns are convergent, divergent, and coevolution. Convergent evolution is the process by which different species evolve similar traits, but they're not from a common ancestor. This is like bats and butterflies. They both fly, but their structures and mechanisms for flight are so entirely different that they must have had different ancestors. They converged in the sense that they can both fly, but their ancestry is not related. Divergent evolution is a process in which the descendants of a single ancestor diversify into species that each fit different parts of the environment. This is what most people think of when they think of evolution. It's sometimes also called adaptive radiation. At some point in history, there was a common ancestor, but the population underwent speciation to split into different species that occupy different niches. And finally, coevolution is when two or more species have evolved adaptations to each other's influence. The bucket orchid and wasp are dependent on each other for reproduction. The wasp fits into the bucket orchid and is the only pollinator that can do the job. The wasp also relies on the scent of the bucket orchid to attract its own mate. They evolved together and are now dependent on each other for the species to survive. Thanks for watching this episode of Teacher's Pet. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow me on Twitter at SciencePet.
Okay, we will. Okay, so then you just have, make sure to do like the readings on the why, because that gives you some information, and then work your way through the Google form. When you're done, I recommend that you get your terms done for next class so you have everything done for this week. Okay, questions or concerns? All right, have at it. You can have a piece of toast.